trombone out there?
Not me.
It's pretty quiet here.
All right, I see that it's 1 o'clock, the appointed time for our Police Advisory Committee to begin. So I also see that all the members of our committee are present, and I will call this meeting to order. We will take a moment of reflection to consider the business at hand, if you will, please. Thank you very much. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the nature thereof on any of the items that have been presented in our agenda from anyone at this time?
No.
I don't see any. So now we'll move to item number 4 on our agenda, and the heading on that is public participation. And so I have something that needs to be read. Members of the public are encouraged to provide the committee with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislated services before the agenda is released. Presentations are limited to 10 minutes and deputations are limited to 5. The public is currently unable to attend committee meetings due to provincial restrictions. If a member of the public wishes to make a deputation on an agenda item, they must do so remotely via phone or the internet. Members of the public wishing to make a deputation must register with legislated services in advance by 4 p.m. And in our case, that was yesterday, July the 27th, by contacting the deputy clerk at meaford.ca or by telephone 519-538-1060, extension 1100. The public can watch this meeting live via the Municipality of Meaford's YouTube channel at www.meaford.ca/YouTube. Mr. Smith, I have had no notification of any presentations. Do we have any?
I don't believe so.
And then item B, any deputations?
No.
Thank you very much. Our next item on our agenda would be item number 5, and I'm looking for approval of the minutes of April the 28th. We've had a chance to look over the minutes. I would need a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes, please.
I move, yeah.
It's moved by Scott.
Can you see?
Need a
me?
seconder?
Yep, Diane.
Thank you, Diane. All in favor of approving the minutes? Thank you. That's carried. Moving into item 6, our items for consideration. Well, before we do that, I should say we have approved them. There was nothing in those minutes that anybody needed to do any kind of an amendment to or anything. We did approve it, but that's a question that should be asked. So we're solid on that? Good, okay. So item 6, items for consideration. The Municipality of Meaford's quarterly report number 2 for 2021. And at this time, I would ask Commander Anderson if you could take us through this report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Starting off on page 3, we have a report with our Grey Bruce Auxiliary in it. Just reporting that we have 10 active members and 17 authorized strength for our auxiliary. We do have 2 members in training right now that will be joining us, but if anybody knows anybody that would like to become an auxiliary with OPP, please send them our way. With the relaxing of the provincial restrictions, we had 148.5 volunteer hours in the last few months, for the month of June actually. And we've also trained our auxiliary unit members to look after the speed spy signs. They would, if we get a speeding complaint, it would go over to the auxiliaries would set it up. And then after a week, they would take the speed spy down, they would download the information and then send it off to myself or my staff sergeants. That saves officers being taken off the road in order to do that type of work. So it's very helpful. And they spent 25.5 hours doing that in the last month. We do have a retirement from our auxiliary unit, Sergeant Kathy Brown. She spent 20 years volunteering with us. So we will be having a ceremony at the detachment, presenting her with her retirement badge. And because of COVID, of course, it will be a closed event, but she will get recognized for her volunteer service with us. On page 4 is a report from our crime unit. This is for April, May, and June. So April and May, our crime unit looked after 47 benchmark occurrences, and June 40 occurrences. So as you may recall, the benchmark occurrences are the more serious ones, including things like sudden death investigations, human trafficking. We had 2 online child exploitation incidents. And they also assist our frontline personnel when they have a more serious, maybe multifaceted initial report from the front line. The crime unit would step in and follow through with that. As you know, our crime unit also handles the homicide investigations. And as you can see in the last paragraph, there's several current homicide investigations ongoing in our detachment area. And you'll see that continuing on the police service board reports. These are more lengthy investigations, and they sometimes takes a couple of years to see them through to court. Eventually, we'll be reporting on the outcomes of those. On page 6 is our community street crime unit report for May and June. We have an acting sergeant in our community street crime. It's Acting Sergeant Jeff Dudley. He was a former street crime constable, and he's acting because our current sergeant is acting staff sergeant because we had a retirement. Jeff comes with extensive experience, and he's doing a phenomenal job in that role. And that's shown by I wanted to bring to your attention the warrant that was executed in Meaford. That resulted in over $12 million worth of product being seized. That was one of the biggest seizures that we've had at detachment level. So that product was destined to go out into the community. So it's great to have that off the street. Let's see. So Grey Bruce, Huron, Perth street crime units assisted our street crime unit with executing a warrant in the northern Bruce Peninsula. And from there, it was disturbing to learn that they had seized numerous weapons, including 5 Molotov cocktails, rifles, ammunition, and compound bow. So again, it's good to get these weapons off the street. Our street crime unit also assists the front line. So if a member makes a traffic stop that results in something more complicated involving drugs or property crime, the street crime unit will step in and assist that officer because it does take quite a bit of time to lodge property and to sort out all the charges that are applicable. So we had a motor vehicle collision that resulted in just over $23,000 worth of product being seized, as well as $4,500 in property. I think that's it for the street crime. So a very successful couple of months for them. So our school and community services, I include that because Nick Wilson is a school resource officer in Grey Highlands. However, he is also assigned, he does that part-time. He is also assigned with community services and presents a lot of helpful, protection for the community and information on frauds, for instance. So he's been doing a lot of that. He's also been trained as our media officer and is currently looking after our media releases, either on social media or the traditional media contacts. He is also being trained in taking part in our situation tables. So you may know that the situation tables are something that the police or other social services can bring to the group and use a multidisciplinary approach to assist somebody who's in crisis. And so he has received training for that and will be taking part in situation tables as they arise in the future. I won't go through all the bullet points, all the community services items that he's been involved in, but the next page 11 is court case management in our part-time unit. So our court unit has processed numerous bails, 25 in April and 16 in May. The June stats weren't quite available just yet. They've also dealt with several warrant-related incidents and processed a number of criminal informations. So they take part once the front line or any of our crime units lay charges. They look after the paperwork and processing it through to the Crown Attorney. Our part-time unit continues to assist the front line in issuing or serving summonses and subpoenas. That's again something that we used to have our frontline officers do, but our part-time officers look after that so they can continue with their regular patrols. They also look after the fingerprints, both criminal fingerprints for anybody who's been charged and requires fingerprints taken, as well as non-criminal prints for people who perhaps are adopting a child or need them for a job. Page 13 and 14 is basically is a summary of all our media releases that we've done over the last few months. And page 17 is also, if anybody wants to follow OPP's media releases on social media, just a how-to sign up if any of our board members would like to do that and follow the media releases for Grey Bruce. Page 18 is under training. I just wanted to make the board aware that currently OPP has equipped Haldeman detachment, as well as our emergency response team and our traffic incident management enforcement team, all with body-worn cameras. And we're using that as a study before we move forward in issuing body-worn cameras to individual officers. We usually, because we're such a large organization, like to do that as a test pilot, work out all the bugs first before it's issued across the province. So I wanted to make the board aware that that's coming here. Page 19 goes through different items, the half load restrictions, but I don't believe Meaford takes part in that, so that's not reported. But your ride hours, foot patrol hours, we have not had any impaired by drugs, which is good news in the last couple of months. And we have had still a couple of COVID related occurrences that we've attended. and your year-to-date calls for service is 1,538. The remainder of the report speaks to your weighted hours, and if there's any questions with respect to that, I'd be happy to answer them. I don't think you want me to go through the data there in an individual basis, but that, Mr. Chair, is my report. The only other item I wanted to speak to, I believe, was it you, Sonia, that was asking about our sudden deaths? And did we feel they were related to any alcohol and drug abuse due to COVID?
It likely was.
Me.
Oh, Diane.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, that-
sorry, Diane. I wanted to let you know that I did ask our analyst to pull the last 5 years worth of sudden deaths in the Meaford area to have a look at that. And I can tell you that although there was an increase in sudden deaths, the majority were natural causes related. And there is, we did not see an increase in the sudden deaths in relation to suicide, alcohol, or drugs from 2019 to 2020. So I wanted to let you know that.
Oh, okay, thanks. I did have one question about the body worn cameras. Is there any reason why, like, we've chosen to have them, the officers wear them, or was there a need, or is it just to try something?
It was an organizational decision. It's not in relation to any one particular detachment, but it is the direction that the organization, the OPP, is going. And like I said, they like to test it out first to work out all the bugs, because not only do we have to have the recordings, but we have to have a way of downloading the information should we need that, either for SIU or for court purposes, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of training that takes place with respect to that. And so it's going to be a few months before that moves forward, but it is being tested out now.
Okay. It's just, you're used to seeing that on TV, and it just seems to be, you see more so violent, like you just see the violent stuff. And, you know, just interesting to see that, you know, that's coming to our area, wearing those.
It can assist with investigations. For instance, an impaired driver. It's one thing to testify in court the signs that the officer observes that, you know, that they perhaps had slurred speech, or they were stumbled on their feet, or they couldn't find their driver's license and gave me their ZERS card for ID, that sort of thing. It's another thing to actually see it in the video. So it does help with investigation. Sometimes help with complaints as well. It helps protect the officers regarding complaints. Sometimes, you know, people embellish as to how the interaction took place, and if you have it on video, but you know, usually the violent recordings do get a lot of media attention, so it's probably why it's what we see on TV.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to thank Commander Anderson for the report that's been provided to the group. And at this time, I know there's been a few questions asked of the commander, but at this time, I would open up questions to the sitting committee as they've read through the reports, and questions for the commander. And you just raise your hand, and I will you get to ask your question. Scott, please go ahead.
There, we're off mute. Yeah, sorry, I got a quick question. We spoke last time about how you were preparing to handle the anticipated extra tourists and workload in the summer. I'm just wondering, is that playing out as you suspected? How is that progressing?
So I did get approval for just over 3,000 hours of overtime for the detachment. That is the equivalent of 12 extra officers that are being deployed. How that works is it rolls out to our detachment for any officers to sign up for any vacancies. The hours and dates that we have open to sign up for overtime are based on our analytics, so that when we have the the biggest increase in calls for service. So it's not just sort of randomly, Monday to Friday, here you go. So we have, I think, over 75% of the overtime shifts filled. And that is, it first goes to our detachment for local officers to sign up. Once that's exhausted and everybody has had a chance to sign up, then it goes out to actually West Region. So we do have officers that come from other areas that fill those shifts. But with the onboard mobile workstations, they have mapping and the law is the same from one jurisdiction to another. It's just really the area that they have to get used to. So we have that, as well as some townships had signed up for proactive traffic enforcement, because as the officers are expected to do proactive work like traffic enforcement when they're not attending calls for service. However, in the summer months when our calls increase over 50%, there's less time for the proactive measures. So some townships have signed up for weekend traffic enforcement paid duties. And again, that goes out to our officers to sign up for. And then once that's exhausted, it goes out to surrounding detachments to see if anybody else wants to sign up for those. So we've had a couple of those weekends that were completed and quite successfully.
So you're happy, with your plan, you're happy that things are working out as you wanted, you expected?
Yeah, sure. There's still some vacant shifts that weren't filled, but we were able to, cover that and make do. It just means that the officers' shifts are going to be busier than expected. But I think that, honestly, I think that the weather has not been the greatest this summer. There's the odd really nice day, but I think that helps in our favor with respect to the types of calls for service that we get. But I am happy with how it's worked out so far. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. That's good.
Thanks for your question, Scott, and your response, Commander. Sonia, did you have a question for the Commander?
Surprisingly, I do not.
Oh,
I did want to say, however, that I really appreciate seeing the report that you put together, Deborah. I like to look at the trends of where we're at to see if there's any ups and downs and that sort of thing. And I feel like we are under good service. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, through you, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind. Thank you for those comments. It's appreciated. This report is still a work in progress. I'm not really completely satisfied with the formatting, but we have a new administrative clerk that has joined us that is very handy with respect to that. So I'm hoping to see some improvements yet with the report.
well, thanks for that, Sonia. I put you on the spot there, but you came through lovely. I don't see yourself on the screen at this point. Steve, did you have something for the Commander?
I do, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question about page 31. It looks like traffic charges. The number of charges in June is a lot lower than the previous 5 months. And with lockdown lifting and so on, I just wonder, is there a reason for that? Or you had alluded earlier that maybe the data wasn't complete for June in one of the areas. Is that what's happening there?
Sure, let me just get to that page.
Sure.
Is that page number from your agenda, or is it from the report? Because
On the report, page 31, offense counts, second quarter.
Sir, I don't have a page 31, so I'm wondering if your agenda, if that's attached to the agenda, if it counts pages from the.
I was following along as you were talking, and things seemed similar. So after calls for service, the
Okay.
billing summary, there's a part page that's blank, and then the next page has offense counts for the first quarter, and then the second quarter is the next page.
They are additional pages to the actual report, Deborah. The calls for service summary report says page 7 of 7, and then we've got some extra documents that look like Excel spreadsheets that may have been computer generated.
Okay. So 7 of 7, and it's the next one?
That's what's in my document.
Oh, okay.
Let-
So it's the offense count and values?
Yes,
Okay.
just looking at monthly totals.
Yeah, so we take our information from our BIQ, and when this report was generated, the June numbers were not available yet. So that will be captured in the next report. Unfortunately, the statistics are slightly behind, and it depends when your police service board meeting is scheduled. So those numbers should be added in the next report, if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's fine. It just, the electronic ticketing that you referred to last meeting, so that isn't instantaneous, shall we say, in terms of report generation?
Well, it is, except that we get our information from BIQ, and that's the way we have traditionally, and that's part of the changes that I want to make to the report in where we get our information, because we have that information that is accessible. I'm going to start pulling the information from our reporting system as well as e-ticketing, rather than relying on BIQ and being behind the information. So
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Makes sense. If I could ask another question, I'm going to go back up the document a bit. Under calls for service, page 7, there is a line that says, second nugget, the report is not to be used for crime trend analysis, as not all occurrences are included. Is that because they're not billable, or sort of what information is missing?
okay, so are you referring to the page 19 where it's action plan?
No, going back, you had the billing summary. It was page 7 of 7 in that document.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I think that that's referring to is the clearance rate, because are you talking about the data contained within this report is dynamic in nature, and numbers will change over time as the OVP continues to investigate and solve crime?
The next nugget.
Okay, report is not to be used for crime analysis. Yeah, that would be the municipality is charged per household, and included in that charge is proactive police work. And
Sure.
so it's the reactive police work that you're billed for on top of the household cost per household.
Okay. So then, looking at the data above, so it should give us a pretty good idea of any crime trends. It may not be 100% inclusive, but it should give us a feeling for it.
Personally, I wouldn't rely on this data for crime trends. What I would do is, if I, similar to the sudden deaths, if I wanted to take a look at a crime trend, or whether there is even a trend, I would refer to our analyst, and they would pull information. They pull it from all different sources, and then they compare it sometimes incident by incident, like the sudden death. You took a look at each individual occurrence for sudden death over a 5-year period, and then we'll put them into a report for me. So if there's a crime trend, or you think there's a crime trend that you would like analyzed that is a concern to Meaford, I would certainly be able to request our analysts take a look at that for you and present that information at your next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. There's nothing in particular that jumped out, but I wonder, would there be more value in having 5 years presented instead of 2, or is that just data overload that doesn't really tell us anything?
Well, honestly, the report that I'm working towards, I would like to have that information over a 5-year period. So that, for instance, calls for service over a 5-year period, and then put it on a chart for you. So you have the visual to see whether your calls for service are trending up or whether they're trending down or if they've made a blip. It's just a quick look to get an idea of where your municipality is at. With the new structure coming up of the Police Services Board, if that's the way it's going to go, I would probably refer to something similar to what they have in Wellington County, who has one contract for the whole county, where you could see the calls for service in each municipality and have a graph in that regard too. But so you could see individually where Meaford stands, but also have it compared to the rest of the county. I think that's important because sometimes, you know, if you've had 3 break-and enters, for instance, and this is unusual for your area, you're concerned about it, and you see that in the neighboring area they've had 20. It puts things in perspective, not to say that we wouldn't address those 3 break-and enters, but I think it's, I guess crime knows no boundaries or borders, we to get sort of an overall perspective of the whole detachment area.
I think that's a great idea. I think it gives us a bigger slice of the pie and a better perspective. So
yeah,
I'd like to see that.
Thank you. Currently, I can't technically share the information from other boards unless there's an agreement between the boards to share that. But when we go to the single police services board, if that's the way it works out for our detachment area, that's my hope is to have a more fulsome report and one that can compare so that you have the best information I can give you.
That'd be really good, because all of these numbers could be slanted by one person moving in and out of our area. Or
Sure.
2 people. Yeah. So
yeah,
that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Steve, and thank you for your response, Commander. Diane, you had a couple of comments earlier. Do you have anything else at this point?
This might not be directly towards the commander, but have we ever in the municipality looked at putting up signage? I've just noticed this year with farming and the increase in tourism that there's a lot of issues with combines or tractors on the road and drivers. Have we ever looked at signage for maybe making people that are from the city more aware of how to drive appropriately around agricultural vehicles?
I don't know, Commander, on that one from your aspect. I think, Diane, the municipality itself, just as a major side note, we've just entered into receiving a transportation master plan. And so all of the dynamics that are involved in moving people through our municipality are in that. But I think maybe making some comments on the transportation master plan might be outside of the scope of the police advisory committee, but I welcome the question, of course.
Okay.
Is there anything else, Diane?
Nope, nothing.
Well, thank you very much, Commander. I have one which you did touch on earlier, and it was about the e-ticketing that came up at our meeting previous. And I want to have your comments, please, about e-ticketing and what kind of influence it has. And on folks that are speeding. I had an opportunity in my life to be over in the Netherlands, and they have cameras all through their traffic system, and they pretty much just don't speed. So I'm just looking for your comments, Commander, on what this e-ticketing can evolve like.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. So I don't think the average citizen, the e-ticketing makes any difference to them, because I don't think that they would necessarily be aware whether we're manually issuing the tickets or whether we're swiping the driver's license, and other than when they get the ticket, it's not hand bombed, it's a computer generated. However, it is more accurate. There's less room for human error, so that the ticket doesn't get quashed either at the administration level or in court. There's less chance of losing the ticket, because occasionally that happens between writing the ticket, answering calls, and then getting to court. And it's just faster. It would on average take about 12, 13 minutes to issue one ticket, never mind when you have a stop that has multiple tickets, down to about 2 or 3 minutes. So the officer is able to get back onto the proactive enforcement faster. And the good part administratively is that I can extract that information, data on the e-ticketing, and it also includes warnings. So before, when an officer used their discretion and issued a warning, there was really no record of that. Now we get how many warnings were issued. So that's sort of the benefit of that. I don't think the average citizen would understand or have that knowledge of e-ticketing. Other than it's just that the officers turn around to get back to enforcement is quicker.
I wonder,
All
Mr.
right.
Chair, if we're at slightly cross purposes between the e-ticketing, which is, as Deborah's explained, the administrative side of doing it. I wonder if your comment is more about the ability that municipalities now have to have automated speed cameras.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. That's not my, I don't know if I can answer that question. I think that Toronto is a jurisdiction where I know that they have like well, sort of the bigger cities have red light type cameras that you can't charge the driver. That charge goes to the owner of the vehicle because it's generated through the license plate. Is that something that Meaford is interested in exploring, or is it just a
passing comment, because we are looking at traffic calming methods, and I wasn't sure whether getting an e-ticket would cause society to say what's been going on, or whether they would start receiving something in the mail because their vehicle's been on the road, and that's been so. I was just looking for a correlation, if there was one, and what you explained, Commander, about the e-ticketing, it's purely administration, and
correct.
From the points that you said. So the other traffic calming things are items that the OPP I know is always looking at methodology of traffic calming, because in your report, again, we have read in your report about those charged with stunt driving. That's excessive speed, and it's in our society, and you and your frontline officers are facing that virtually every day.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do know that in watching our press releases that Meaford has had a few stunt drivers picked up, and I believe it's on one was the area that they were picked up on. So it's not exclusive to the other areas. We do get a lot of traffic coming in through Collingwood, Thornbury, to Meaford, and as well as a few impaired drivers still. So yeah, we are able to turn around and do the enforcement, get back to enforcement quicker with the e-ticketing, but it is separate. That is something that's issued to the driver by the officer, as opposed to something similar to like a red light camera where the owner of the vehicle would be charged.
Well, thank you very much, Commander, this afternoon. I think that I'm taking note of the time, and we have another agenda item, and I want to thank you for your report. And I know that, as you've mentioned, you're working on streamlining it and making it even easier for us, and appreciate that work very much. So thank you.
Chair.
So on our next item, and this is one that's going to take a good period of time. Item 7 is the staff update on our community safety and well-being plan, and whether that would be you, Mr. Smith, that will lead us through that. I know that Sonia has been deeply involved in this, and I'm sure that she'll have an opportunity, but would it be yourself, Mr. Smith, that's going to take us through that?
I'm actually going to leave this very happy update to Hannah and Sonia if
Okay.
if she's got something to add, and they'll take it from here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I don't want to wax on too long about the plan. It's attached for your reference if you've had a chance to look through it, but just wanted to provide the committee with an update on where we are in terms of the plan's adoption with council. So we provided this version of the plan to council for their agenda this past Monday, July the 26th. So they reviewed the document in committee of the whole. So they had a chance to, ask us any questions and kind of provide their feedback at that time. Sonia and Matt and another member of our statutory committee for the plan provided a presentation to council. And generally speaking, I won't speak for council, but I do think it was well received. And with that being said, we will move forward with providing the final plan for their approval in September, which is their next meeting. So the current version you see attached to our agenda today is all of the content, the layout, the general sequence of the document. It's all final. But we are still working with our in-house graphic design team to kind of incorporate some more visual elements. So this is not exactly the final plan, but it's quite close. So in September, we'll provide them with that final document, and with all hopes that it goes well, we should have the plan adopted in September. So now we're just kind of looking ahead, looking at what we can do to kind of jumpstart our implementation once we do have it formally adopted. So as you'll see within the plan, we've kind of included some general timelines for all of our action items for each section. As much as we would love to, make everything happen all at once, we do have to kind of consider how we can kind of phase this in over time. It is a plan that covers 2021 through to 2025. So there are quite a few action items on there that, we might kind of work our way up and kind of tackle those come later years, 2023, 2024. But I do think there's quite a few action items in there that, whether you want to call them a quick win or, sort of a little bit easier and more attainable to kind of get going right away. So we're excited to start making that happen once we've got our final approval. If there's any questions or comments on the plan, I'm happy to take those. And I'm sure Sonia might also be able to help us out if there's any specific questions.
I want to thank you, Hannah, for the work. I know you were thanked from council on Monday, but I think, Sonia, I know you will have some content for us on this. And from my aspect, this subject matter came up even through our Community Policing Advisory Committee, because it was duly noted that sometimes an officer standing in front of someone with an issue, that maybe the police are just not the right ones to be in at that time. And there's other services. And I know that this is a holistic view of how we can better serve one another in the community. So Sonia, would you like to say a few words on this? I know you've been working on it. I'd open it up to yourself.
I would, thank you. So I wanted to start off by thanking the members of our community. Excuse me, I have a cold. The members of our community who provided us with their thoughts in about the issues within our community that I hope that they see in our plan. We listened to what our community issues were, and we're really thoughtful in looking at ways in which we could address those issues. I also wanted to thank Deborah as a member of the committee who was also there and help guide us through developing the plan, and particularly the section around crime and prevention. I'm really excited about this plan. I'm excited about the municipality and looking at this plan as a go forward activity. I truly believe that it's going to help members of our community who are marginalized and provide them with a better lifestyle. Thanks, Councillor.
Well, thank you, Sonia, for your remarks. And at this point, I would ask other members of this committee if they have a question that they would like to ask Hannah. Since she presented it and you've had opportunity to read through it. If other members have a question, I don't see, I see Diane, you're there. I can see you. Do you have a question for Hannah? Scott, I see you. Scott, go ahead, please.
I've taken a quick look through it and read some parts in detail. I'm just wondering, is this a strategic plan or is there costing? There's a lot on the menu there, and I'm wondering, is it costed? Because to say council, you know, if they approve it, are going to implement it even over 3 or 5 years, it's, you know, at the end of the day, some things may not be possible, or at least may not be done in the way ideally envisioned. So I'm just wondering where this fits in the hierarchy of plans. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I can take that one for you, Councillor Bell. So in terms of the plan, it is a legislative requirement. So all municipalities in Ontario are required to have one as of July of this year. However, there's a couple of ways you can do it. So Meaford's council did decide to develop a local plan. So that's why we kind of endeavored to go out on our own. Similarly, other communities in Grey and Bruce have joined together under a joint county plan. So that encompasses both Grey and Bruce counties. So that's kind of just a little bit of background information on what type of plan it is. It is a legislative requirement. But in terms of where it fits in with the financial piece, it definitely is quite the endeavor, and even spread out over the course of 4 years, as you mentioned, it is quite a leap. So we certainly acknowledge that when we were putting together the action items as a committee. And I do think there's going to be a large part, first of all, for grant funding, where I'm hopeful that because this is a legislative requirement through the Ministry of the Solicitor General, I'm really hopeful that, you know, maybe some provincial funding will be put forward for communities trying to make these plans happen. But that's certainly something that's a little bit unknown right now. But so certainly grant funding will be a large piece of that. I also know in terms of any strategic plans or, you know, municipal documents that go before council, any kind of decision making happens at the time that it's happening, if that makes sense. So certainly by accepting the plan, council isn't signing off on spending a bunch of money. It's something that will continually have to go back to them and say, you know, so if we're moving this action item forward, this funding need has been identified, and that will be kind of dealt with during the budget season. So I'm not sure if that exactly answers your question, but
no, it does. That's fine. I find it a useful, if nothing else, it's a useful reference document when you're justifying things or developing even other policies that touch on it. There's a lot of data in there, even though I'm just seeing the summary data. I think it's quite useful. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Scott, and thank you, Hannah, for that. Steve, I don't see you on my screen. Do you have a question for Hannah on this?
No, my concern was the same as Scott's. It's a wonderful plan, a lot of good ideas in there, but it is going to cost money. And hopefully we do get some grants in the future. And I guess maybe it's premature, but is somebody on staff responsible for it? Will there be a lead on it, or is that in the future?
I think that's still a bit unwritten at this time. I think once we have final approval of the plan in September, certainly there will be quite a few considerations on the administrative end of things. Our clerk, Matt, who has had to leave us, he was really kind of our champion for bringing forward the idea of developing this plan in Meaford. And certainly I think it has a place in community services within the municipal structure, but what exactly that looks like at this time, we're not quite sure.
Okay, yep, that's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Diane, do you have something for Hannah?
I'll just unmute myself. It's just like setting up the infrastructure for kind of a constitution for Meaford, and I think it's a great beginning. And I think it's going to be able to give us some consistency over time from, whoever is going to be sitting in council, for a longer period than when people are sitting. So I think it's a great idea.
Well, thank you for that, Diane. Sonia, did you put your hand up again there? Well, go ahead, Sonia.
I did, thank you, Councillor. I just wanted to mention, and Hannah, you may want to expand on it, that part of what we're looking at is people working together differently and in stronger partnerships. So while, yes, there will be some costs incurred, some of it is also going to be addressed by strengthening partnerships, education, and those sorts of approaches. So it's not all just infrastructure cost.
Yeah, absolutely, Sonia. As she mentioned, a big part of kind of our goal for this document was to kind of jumpstart a new way of working together in Meaford. And I think even through our statutory advisory committee who helped us develop the plan, even what we've begun there, I think if we keep up that momentum, we have a real opportunity to get some more integrated partnerships, some more networking at the local level. And it's certainly a big piece of the plan, and it'll be important on the go forward as we try and implement all of these items and kind of bring the plan to life in the community.
Well, thank you, Hannah, and thank you, Sonia, and the questions from this committee. I thank you all for your good, solid questions and your reading of the document. I know our next item 8 is speaking about the correspondence that has been sent to us, and I'm taking note of the time. I would just simply ask, is there anything on the correspondence list that any member wishes to pull or have comment on? And if there's not, I would like to ask this sitting committee to take just a few moments. Is there something that has come to your attention on this committee that we can have in our minutes that our commander can think about and maybe add in to our next meeting? So is there something from any sitting member that you wish to make comment of that can be duly noted? Okay, we haven't had anything that's come up, and well, that's fair enough. So on the communications, is there anything that anyone wishes to pull on our communications list? And if I see nothing, then I'll make note then, just with a few minutes before 2 p.m. that it's slated that our next meeting is going to be in November on the 24th. And before I call for adjournment, I want to thank each one of you for your participation on this committee. It is absolutely integral, particularly with the work that's moving forward on two fronts. The one that you've just had comments on with the safety and well-being of our community, and the commander has made note that there will be changes likely in the future as to how the community participates with the police force in our community. And it might well involve a larger scope of individuals and a larger footprint in our region. But I just want to thank you all for your time and for volunteering and for reading the agenda and your participation and joining today. So with that, I'll call that closing comments, and I would ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Diane. And with that, I will call an end to this sitting of the Police Advisory Committee. And thank you all again very much.